the pretty girls, the young guys, like I was when I was 17, 18 doing it, would get on a boat, but the guys that looked like us would be flying home and not going anywhere and wasting their time. So after being on the receiving end of this, people would walk by and they'd walk the docks and everybody, you want to tell these people something. So they'd go, oh, go talk to Hank Schmitt. He did a solo trip across. He probably needs crew. And I didn't need crew. I had my friend that was my high school crew for 4 years who planned a couple of years to get the time off from work, and we were just double-handing back. So I left not with that, but with the idea is, there has to be a better way of than just flying in and begging. And that's where I came up with the idea and the name. I'm coming up on 300,000 miles. So really, just by law of averages, you're going to be in a lot of different situations.
Yeah.
It's the old commercial, never let them see you sweat. You always have to stay calm because people are looking at you. And if the leader of the organization or whatever is losing it, then that's not a good thing. That's not really what I'm thinking about. It's really just you have to deal with what happens. And, I've had 2 dismastings, luckily always my own boats, never a customer or client. As long as you have your mast, sails up, and you can steer, you're fine. I've been on emergency steering, for several days, more than once. And there was one incident a few years ago. We got pushed back by a wave in a big enough storm and bent the rudders. After a week of trying to figure out what we're going to do, and this is in the wintertime, we realized we had to abandon the boat, and it was a helicopter rescue. Even during that, the whole time, after we got into the Coast Guard station, they asked, can we film you for it and everything? We were so boring because there was never any danger or we were never in fear for our lives or anything.
One of the things I remember sailing with you, Hank, is, and I think to this day, you probably are still the calmest, most relaxed captains I've ever sailed with. And I think that comes from all of the years of experience that you've had. You don't get excited. Things break, things happen, but you never get too excited about it. You just calmly go through and we fix it. But have you had those moments on any of your adventures where you weren't able to stay that calm, or where there was maybe earlier in your career quite a bit of an excitement?
Well, I'm coming up on 300,000 miles. So really, just by law of averages, you're going to be in a lot of different situations.
Yeah.
But it's really, it's the old commercial, never let them see you sweat. You always have to stay calm because people are looking at you. And if the leader of the organization or whatever is losing it, then that's not a good thing. That's not really what I'm thinking about. It's really just you have to deal with what happens. And, I've had 2 dismastings, luckily always my own boats, never a customer or client. I did have one trip once where we, as long as you have your mast, sails up, and you can steer, you're fine, But once you lose one or both of those, and I've had many times where I had to sail a boat into the dock. I've been on emergency steering, for several days, more than once. But once your steering is totally inoperable, then that's a big problem. And there was one incident a few years ago. Luckily, the owner and his wife was on board, and I had Charlie Doan, who's a writer for Sail Magazine, aboard. So after we got pushed back by a wave in a big enough storm and bent the rudders, after a week of trying to figure out what we're going to do, and this is in the wintertime, we realized we had to abandon the boat, and it was a helicopter rescue. We actually, Charlie's second boat, the prelogue and the epilogue are about this, and the rest of the stories he tells are in the middle of it, about how we got a helicopter rescue. Even during that, the whole time, after we got into Elizabeth, the Coast Guard station, they asked, can we film you for it and everything? We were so boring because there was never any danger or we were never in fear for our lives or anything.
No.
We just couldn't steer. So at first, we were waiting for a ship to pick us up because we were 300 miles from the U.S., from Bermuda, from anywhere, and it was right at the edge of helicopter range. Luckily, out of Norfolk, a helicopter can come out, land on a warship, pick you up, go back to the warship to refuel and go in. So it was long, and they elected to do it. We were fine, not fine, but if we thought at first the ship was going to come by, but when a helicopter, they changed it to a helicopter, that was fine. So it wasn't so much the danger, but, again, you just think everything through calmly. Both dismastings I had were hundreds of miles from sea, one in the Tiana and one in our Swan, again, both my own boats.
Were you
got in both times on our own.
Down in a storm, Hank? How did that happen?
The first one was Portuguese trades, going from Spain down to the Canary Islands. and it was a race, so I had to spinnaker up in too much breeze, with double handing, have everything cleated off, and you get a knockdown, and all you want to do is head down, everything's cleated off, and the spinnaker, filled instantly. They call it shock loading the rig, with an old sail or a bad halyard, the halyard or the sail would break. But when everything's new and good shape, again, I'm a rigger, I had new sails, the weak leak was the mast. So it just went over the side. But we were able to get rid of it, ourselves. It never happens in daylight and calm weather. So you have to cut the rig away, but we were able to get in, and true to history, just like Columbus re-rigged one of his boats in the Canary Islands, I re-rigged in the Canary Islands and made the start by, I'm a rigger. I put a mast together. You'd think, oh my, it cost a fortune. Back then, the mast was $5,000. The rigging from my rigging shop at discounts was another $3,000. I had to ship it over there. So for less than $10,000, I had my new mast put together. Again, I put it together myself out of the box, and I had my old set of sails, so I'd have to buy a new set of sails that I lost. So I put the old sails back on, was able to finish it. Then with the other boat that was coming back actually from Caribbean on the way to Bermuda, and a huge front came through, again, years before they had the satellite weather that you have now. And there were 3 boats dismasted that night. One was abandoned, one got towed in, and we made it in on our own. And I actually jury rigged in Bermuda and got a fuel bladder, because I wasn't going to leave the boat in Bermuda without a mast, because it's much more expensive and harder to do. And I didn't really want to let the insurance company know, because I thought they'd say, you can't leave from Bermuda to go to Newport without a mast. So I just left without letting them know to get the boat there. So it was much easier and controllable to re-rig. And that was in 2008. So yeah, a couple of dismastings. But again, on more than one delivery has steering failed in one way or another. So you're either on emergency steering, or you fix it, or you jury rig. Again, engines fail all the time. Again, everything's much better now. Autopilots, they used to say you got 60 days out of an autopilot back in the 80s, whether that was spread out over 3 or 4 seasons or 60 days in a row, they weren't going to last much longer. But everything's a lot more reliable now. But back then, engines, when you had to bleed them still, deliveries all the time. You take a boat offshore that's been sitting for a long time, shake everything up. You better have lots of fuel filters to get there. So, it's a sailboat. There was never sea tow or anything like that. Your sailboat, you should have the time. You should be self-sufficient. You should be able to get, unless your mast comes down or you have no steering, then your options are limited. But other than that, it's really just thinking things through. It's not like you're driving and going really fast and you have to react instantly. Normally something happens, there's a problem, you just think, sit back, take time. Lots of stories where you just say, listen, don't do anything yet. Don't start looking for pieces to fix something with a sledgehammer to start getting pieces of wood to do something. Take your time, think it through, and yeah, don't panic.
Did you always have that ability to stay calm, do you think? Even from the early days of your time on the water?
I think, at an early age, starting to travel early, again, going to prep school, you're taking the train by yourself when you're 14 or 15. And, certainly at 18, $80, taking a ticket down to Florida, and just, keeping it simple and thinking through. And at 19 is when I drove down to Texas with $500 to hit the Yellow Pages to go work offshore rigs. I had $500 and 2 suitcases. Car payment of $103. So certainly keep your expenses down. And when you're young, you can do those things.
Yeah.
I didn't get married for the first time till I was 44. You can't quit your job and go sailing for a year in your young 30s if you have a wife and kids and obligations like that.
Yeah. So OPO, or you call it OPO, Offshore Passage Opportunities. Is this the
long name, but very descriptive of what we do, Offshore Passage Opportunities.
Very descriptive. And is this the 30th anniversary?
It actually is. I came up with the idea in 93 over in the Canary Islands doing a transatlantic trip. So came back and did a DBA for the name. I was actually broke from taking a year off and sailing to Europe and back. So in 95, I really started doing the boat show circuit and placing ads. I, back then, pre-internet, I just had my mailing list and the people I knew. So I didn't quit my day job for many years.
What was the day job, Hank, at that time?
Working on boats.
Yeah.
Back then, whether it was I'm a rigger by trade when I worked for yards, but when I went out on my own, it was really just focusing on what are you doing today? Make $200 a day. It'll work out, whether it was delivering a boat, diving, cleaning bottoms, rigging boats, or in the wintertime, I actually commercial fish for 3 winters because once the boats are put away for the winter, there's not much going on.
Did you do that up in New England, or where were you fishing?
I did it out of Montauk,
Yeah.
the end of Long Island. I knew they had a fishing fleet, so I went out there one October because there wasn't a lot going on. And after I got the job on the boat, it was funny because the captain said, Hank, you're the only person that ever came looking for a job with a written resume. It's not the way the
Well,
commercial fishing works.
yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you started OPO, and it helped me get into blue water sailing. I had been sailing in the Caribbean chartering, but that was the sailing light, I would call it, compared to real offshore passage making. And through your program, it gave me the confidence to get to the level where now I can crew with other captains. So,
It is very hard to make that transition, coastal sailing.
yeah.
You can learn how to sail in a weekend, but you spend your life learning more. But you can take lessons or have a small boat, but unless you live near the water, belong to a club or have those connections with somebody that has a boat to match up, it's very hard to make those connections. So that's what we're about, helping people make that transition from learning how to sail or coastal sailing for a long time. Offshore sailing does take time because you're going 5 or 6 knots and going long distances. So you need weeks, days, weeks, sometimes months. So it's not for everybody, but we help people transition, whether it's helping them get that first offshore experience by paying on one of our
Hmm.
Swan trips. I help them get enough of a sailing resume to qualify. Of course, the goal is to go sailing for free. You retire and you don't want to spend all your money the first 2 or 3 years while you're young and are anxious to do a lot because you haven't had the time. So this is a way where you go sailing for free, helping other people move their boats. So it keeps you from spending money because you don't spend money offshore. So it's actually even better.
Yeah, it's a great plan. Well, I'm
Yeah.
curious to dive into all of it and how you even came up with the idea. But first, I'd love to go back, Hank, and I don't think I've talked to you about your childhood. Were you born on a boat? How did you get such a deep love for the sea?
No, grew up, and when I was younger, we didn't live near the water, but for the summers, my dad would rent a place closer to the water. And this is again when I was 3, 4, and 5. And then we eventually moved to the water when I was between first and second grade. But my mother went to college to be a phys ed teacher. So she just introduced us to everything. I mean, it was great. Everything from horseback riding to skiing to sailing to archery. I was talking to my sister this week and we were laughing with the Olympics. The only thing my mother didn't do is we never did curling. But she just introduced a lot to us. And then when we moved to the water, rather than go away to camp or do a baseball camp or something, there was a yacht club down the road. So just took sailing lessons. I mean, that's what the kids did. You had your summer friends, your winter friends at school, and your summer friends you'd sail with. And, just thought that was normal and just did that for a long time. Fortunate enough to have the opportunity to go away to a school that had a sailing team. So I sailed in high school. And again, more recreational as a job in high school rather than pump gas in cars. I pumped gas in boats and launch service, which was fun. So my summers were between sailing and the sailing classes or doing some Junior Yacht Racing Association regattas. I would work at the marina. They loved it, weekends pumping gas and launch service. So you just bank your paycheck and save your tips. So it was a great thing. Never thought it'd be a profession, but it just sort of went that way.
Was that all on Long Island?
I was all on Long Island, although I went to a school just north of Newport. A lot of people think I'm from Newport because we lead with our Swan program or do the Newport Boat Show.
Yeah.
So that was my Sin City when I was in high school, just north of a school called Portsmouth Abbey. And again, they had the sailing team. Fortunate if I was there when the America's Cup was there. I got to be at least near it for 2 of the cycles. They used to do it every 3 years, but the New York Yacht Club never raced on Sundays out of tradition. And my school had school 6 days a week, so I never got to see anything, but at least it was close to it.
Portsmouth Abbey, was that like a Christian school?
It's run by Benedictine monks.
Okay.
And, you didn't have to be Catholic to go, but yeah, it was, I went to parochial school and just my parents had a friend whose son went there. So I went there. It's not like we were looking to go.
Yeah.
It's just that your parents have somebody going there and they said, you want to go? And I said, sure. I had 3 sisters. So I said, go away to school? Absolutely. Send me. So
Where
I
are
was
you in the line,
fortunate.
Hank? Are you youngest, oldest, or in the middle?
One older sister, then I have
Yeah.
2 younger sisters and then a baby brother. I was going away to high school. He was 9 years younger. So we didn't really grow up together too much. So he's into power boats and fishing and I'm more into sailing and dragging
Well, he's on the
line.
dark side.
He's on the dark side, yes.
So when did you first start doing ocean passages?
Well, really a calling as much to the sea. Again, I did go away to a high school, but my long story short, my dad lost the family business, so there wasn't really money to go to college. So I took a year off, worked in that marina like I did for a year. At 18, I actually did a one-way plane ticket and went down to Florida for the Southern Ocean Racing Circuit, which used to be a 6-weekend event regatta. It morphed into Key West because people didn't have 6 weeks anymore or even weekends. This is going back into the 70s, but flew down there with $80 a one-way ticket, walked the docks, sort of way before Oppo, and sort of 30 years later or 20 years later in the Canary Islands, I was on the other end of people just flying in, walking around the docks and begging for a trip. And for me, it worked. I was 18, it was very easy. And I got on a Morgan 1-ton out of the boat was out of Atlanta, Georgia. So I was their token Yankee. And I did the 6 races over 6 weeks with them. And then worked for the owner for 3 days afterwards at Lake Lanier in Georgia. He was a sailmaker there, put the boat away, and he gave me a ticket to go home, paid me for 3 days. So I came home with the same amount of money, $80 that I went with back then. That was 1 year off. It turned into a second year off. And then that's when I realized, well, Hank, you have to get a real job. You can't be working in a marina. Well, not to disparage anybody that works in marinas for their whole lives. But I ran away to sea, which back then was I went down to Texas in January of 1978 and hit the Yellow Pages and worked offshore oil rigs for 6-7 years.
Oh, did you?
So I did that for a long time from 78 to about 85. Sort of went to bust in 83, 84, but stayed in Texas, went to school for a little while because I had saved money. But when I ran out of money, I came back up north with somebody I'd met down in Texas. And I started working in that same marina I did when I was in high school 7 years later. Worked for them for a year and then started delivering boats. Worked for another dealer for a year, delivered more boats, and went out on my own at 29 years old, working on boats, delivering boats, the commercial fishing, just, anything. I actually lived on a boat for 14 years, which was great. Me going to work rather than jumping in my car, I jump in the dinghy. And we have a lot of boats on moorings in my area. So I just go out to the boats and go around. And
Was that back
that
in
was
Long Island when you were living on the
yeah,
boat?
that was back in Huntington.
Yeah.
In New York, the North Shore, people have more money than time, so they hire you to do lots of things that they don't have the time for. And I really specialize in 2 things that boat owners don't do. They don't like going to the top of the mast, and they don't like going underneath their boat. So I do rigging work, building furling systems and checking out things like that. And then
Yeah.
that gets slow in the spring because all the boats are rigged and nobody's really buying new furling systems or adding much in the summertime. But by then the boats have been in the water for a couple of months. So do some diving, cleaning bottoms, and then moving boats. Again, if you have the same 1 or 2 week off every year, you can only cruise so far, but you hire a delivery skipper to bring the boat, from the middle of Long Island Sound out to Newport or the end of the island. Then all of a sudden they could expand their cruising grounds.
Yeah.
So just started moving boats and things like that. And then I was living on the boat and I saw in Cruising World magazine about this event that Jimmy Cornell was doing called the America 500, following Christopher Columbus's route in 1992. So in 1989, I sent in $75 to this guy in England and signed up for that event. And that's where my goal was for 2 or 3 years, just to get my boat ready for a transatlantic and to do this historic crossing.
So was that from Long Island or Newport over to Spain?
It started in Columbus because, of course, we were following Columbus's route, so we
Okay.
had to get there. So I left and actually got left from Huntington, but I went out to Montauk for a day or two to get ready to leave from there, and stow everything away after my departure from Huntington. So I went to Bermuda first, just because I had never been there before. Then the Azores and Spain. I went to Europe and back, but I only spent 8 days in mainland Europe because I got there. They had a free dockage for 1 week when you first arrived. So I got there 8 days before. I went up the Guadalquivir River to see the World Expo because in
Yeah.
92, everything was in Europe. They had the Olympics. The Summer Olympics were in 92. They had a World Expo up in Seville, Spain.
Yeah.
And then Tony Cornell was doing this big event. So we were there for the 8 days. The first part of the fleet left the same day Columbus did. He left in August, not knowing about hurricane season. But Jimmy Cornell wasn't about to start an event in August to go across the ocean then. So you had the option of leaving the historic day, which was a big celebration in Spain, televised throughout the world with a flotilla of boats leaving, parading by. They have a statue in Huelva, Palos, where he left from, sort of like we have the Statue of Liberty. There's a big statue of Columbus that America gave to the Spanish
Mm.
people in like 19 or something. So we paraded past that, like just like we would parade past the Statue of Liberty and on out, and then on to the Canary Islands, like Columbus did. The fleet left in October 12th, which was when Columbus arrived in the Americas, and then the two fleets joined up in the Canary Islands for a week together in October, and then did the sail all the way to the Bahamas. And it was there that people were flying in, just like I had flown into Florida when I was younger, to walk the docks and ask who needed crew. Again, this is pre-internet. So they just knew that there were a couple hundred boats, and it still happens. The ARC rally happens every year, and lots of rallies and fleets leave from the Canary Islands with the seasons to go across the ocean. So people would fly in, and the pretty girls, the young guys, like I was when I was 17, 18 doing it, would get on a boat, but the guys that looked like us would be flying home and not going anywhere and wasting their time. So after being on the receiving end of this, people would walk by and they'd walk the docks, and everybody, you want to tell these people something. So they'd go talk to Hank Schmitt. He did a solo trip across. He probably needs crew. And I didn't need crew. I had my friend that was my high school crew for 4 years, who planned a couple of years to get the time off from work, and we were just double handing back. So I left not with that, but with the idea is, there has to be a better way of than just flying in and begging. And that's where I came up with the idea and the name. Got back to the States the following year. And then, like I said, did a DBA for the name and didn't do a whole lot for 2 years, because I literally came back with 5 maxed out credit cards and $50 in my pocket. So it wasn't a good time to start a business,
You had to
especially in the
refill the kitty.
Exactly.
So you single-handed across?
I did. Yep. And it's easier preparing your boat to cross things off the list than it is to save the money and install them. So I did have a monitor wind vane, but no electronic autopilot. I had no radar, no windlass, a GPS that I bought the week before I left for $1,100, because there wasn't even full coverage for GPS back in 92, 93. Of course, I had a sextant and everything I needed, but you're more relying on that, once a day, putting that GPS on and just getting a lat long. That's all you needed. It wasn't a picture of where you were or anything else like that. So again, it was easier just to go real minimalist. I did put in refrigeration because I like cold beer, but again, it's just keep it simple. And it really does work.
Fascinating. What size boat was that, Hank?
I was a Tiana 37.
Okay.
A great boat, cutter rigged, full keel, all the traditional things that we always wanted. Now it's more into speed and getting there quickly and instant communication and Starlink and everything else. So it's totally changed. But way back when, again, it was the cusp of GPS. I'm not saying I'm no celestial navigation real well. And, anybody that sailed the oceans pre-GPS, just on that, it is different than now, which again, it's great, making it a lot easier, and totally love the technology. But again, it's almost gone too far with, people are streaming and talking home and
Starlink and everything.
It's real. Offshore sailing was the last good getaway that you had the perfect excuse to tell people, listen, just don't contact me for the next week or two, and don't worry, everything's fine.
Yeah, I agree. This morning I was listening to Andy Schell interview John Kashmir, and they were talking about, the pros and cons of Starlink and how you lose that sense of total adventure.
Yes. And the first thing when you get in cell phone range now is everybody's on their phones, of course, checking in right away.
Yes.
But that's, again, I get it. But, you're out in the middle of the ocean and somebody dies. What are you going to do except ruin your experience? It's not like you're going to get there or anything like that.
How long did that first crossing take you?
It took me 7 days to get to Bermuda, 15 days, the 1,800 miles to the Azores, and then another 8 days to mainland Spain. And I did that because I sailed the whole way. With the wind vane, if there's no wind, you have to motor to get there. And I'm solo sailing, so I'm not going to burn fuel and stand there to go 6 knots or 5 knots when I could be sailing at 2 or 3. So I did sail the whole way. Never put the engine in gear until I saw land. When you get close enough, you're trying to beat daylight. But sailed the whole way, and even on the way back, in the ARC rallies, they have a racing division where you can't use the engine. Out of 150 boats, there are like 12 boats in that division now. Everybody, motors to get where you want to go. But I was in the racing division on my Tiana 37 in 92, and it took 30 days to get across the ocean because Columbus didn't have charts. Obviously, he went to the Bahamas, which add 800 miles, an extra week to your trip. to the normal, everybody goes to the Canary Islands rather than all the way to the Bahamas.
Yeah.
So it was a long 3,000-mile crossing where normally it's 2,500 or 2,200 or something like that from the Azores across to the Caribbean, depending on where you're going.
These new records they're setting, Hank, crossing in like 4 or 5 days. It's just
Awesome.
incredible.
It's amazing. Yeah, no, around the world in 40 days.
Yeah.
When they first did it, it was around the world in 80 days, like Jules Verne
Yeah.
actually call it that. But now it's, they're about to break 40, well, just over 40 days now. So it is fascinating.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that would take the joy out of it for me, being all about the speed.
I see both ways.
Yeah.
You know, I raced a lot when I was younger. We've done 19 Heidegen regattas, but when you get a racer on board when you're cruising, he's always adjusting the sails. It gets annoying. So yeah, it's a different mindset.
Yeah.
Going fast is fun, but even going fast gets old.
Yeah.
Going down the road at 75 miles an hour, and even that doesn't seem fast after a while.
Yeah.
Everything's relative.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
when you get
it is the one sport where you get excited when you're going 10 miles an hour. I mean,
yeah,
what other
10 miles,
sport or something where you,
you're all whooping it up. And it's
yeah,
so
exactly.
funny. I don't know about you. I come back from one of those trips and you're averaging maybe 6 or 7. You get in your car and you get on the freeway and I don't panic, but it's like so much speed. Everyone's moving so fast after you've been on sea for a week or two. It's a
Oh,
strange feeling.
go away for a year and don't drive much for a year and then come back and jump back into it. Then it's really different.
Yeah, I bet. So when you started Oppo, what was your concept for it? Was it just matching crew with captains, or did you think broader to what you're doing with it today?
Well, I'd been a delivery skipper for a long time, and a lot of my trips were short trips, because again, the New York area, there's lots of 1 and 2 day trips. You're moving boats for boat shows and for dealers. Again, pre-internet, people didn't buy boats as far away as they do now, so it wasn't as long of deliveries. And anything under 24 hours, I do by myself. And
Hmm.
this is on boats that, back then, maybe 20% of boats had autopilots. Nobody had autopilots back in the 80s. Everybody does, but you deliver boats, especially with New York City, from the South Shore going through the city from the North Shore to the South Shore, delivering. New York City, the names of the places, Gravesend Bay and Hell's Gate, and they're just great names for delivery skippers. People think it's dangerous. Oh, we better hire a skipper to
Yeah.
get the boat through. So, I mean, some years I was going through New York City 20, 30 times, each year. And this is for 10, 15, 20 years. So a lot of short trips. I do it by myself, and even run out of friends that have time. But I knew other people. So when I first got back, it made a lot of sense. Again, putting together, how do you go sailing, without having to fly in and beg, et cetera, those sort of things. But a lot of the good opportunities with delivery skippers, you want to up your game. If you want to be a better golfer, a better skier, you golf or ski with people better than you. Same thing with sailing. Just sail with just not better people, but other people, because there are different ways to do it. So you want to sail and be with as many different people. You develop and what you like, the way they run their boat, you develop that into your style of how you run your boat. So you just sort of take from everybody and mold out how you want to run yours. So it was really to just help people get on the water. And it's a win-win situation because you're helping a delivery skipper that is looking for crew, or a boat owner that he retires, buys a boat, and he realizes all his friends and family are still working and don't have time. So he needs to meet new friends. It's easier to meet new friends that know how to sail than it is to teach your friends how to sail. So a lot of people meet through us, and you're a perfect example. You meet people, and then they call you back the next time. If a boat owner meets our members and they like you, they're not going to call me for a stranger next time. They're going to call you directly to first see if you're available. And then if not, then they might come to me and ask me to put out a crew request to send to our members, to have them send in their sailing resumes so they can go ahead and try and help. So it's a win-win-win for everybody, whether it's the delivery skipper, the boat owner, or even the boat owner that is hiring a skipper to move his boats. He's going to save money because he doesn't have to pay for 3 people, transportation for 3. And the delivery skipper can take a 4th person because it doesn't cost more money. So that's even safer to move the boat with 4 people rather than 3. And it gives more people the opportunity to get the experience to see if they actually do want to pursue it, buy a boat, which is good for the industry. So I
Yeah.
actually, on my website, I have a big rant about the industry, about how we should be helping more people sail by organizing rallies and offering more opportunities for people to get them out on the boats, just to fall in love with it, so they buy boats and then spend money on everything that we do. It's a big ocean, a big world out there, so there's lots of room for us to go
Yeah.
explore
What
the
I love
world.
about your program, Hank, the way I got into it was my first sail with you was the Dominica trip and, the
Okay,
overnight sail down to Dominica, learning from you. I learned a ton from you. And then I got into your Swan program and did, I think the first one was Maurizio and Tanya from
okay,
St. Thomas
there.
to up to Newport. Yeah.
Uh huh.
That was in the height of COVID. And,
Yeah.
and then I did another trip with Tanya, a return from Bermuda to New York.
Hmm.
And that was my first trip through Hell's Gate that you just mentioned. So
Sure.
that was a lot of fun. And Tanya and Maurizio are great to learn from. And then I had enough on a sailing resume to start crewing and get some crewing slots.
Exactly, and that works perfectly. For our listeners that don't know who Tanya Abbey is, she actually sailed around the world by herself on a 26-foot boat back in the 80s, as I was talking about, pre-GPS. She didn't do it nonstop, but just going back to sailing is one of the sports where you could actually sail either with or against the celebrities, the big people out there, whether it's a John Kretschmer you mentioned in 59 North, Andy Schell, Tanya, myself. We're all very accessible and out there. So it is an opportunity to not only learn from the best, but to brag about it a bit and meet
Yeah.
them and just feed off each other and meet other people. And like you say, just the more people you meet, the more people you meet, the more you get exposed to. So we're a way to help people get that start, to get the sea time on their resume, to qualify to either get enough time to get your ticket so you can turn into a nice little side job as you retire, to move boats. Nothing better than getting sailing all day is getting paid to go sailing all day. So
Yeah. I love Tanya's story. She started out with like a plastic sextant. That was her navigation.
yeah, yep. No, it's a fascinating book. It took her 2 weeks to get to Bermuda because she didn't realize her warped plastic sextant was a little bent from the sun. So yeah,
Yeah. I'll have to see if I can get Tanya to come on the show. That'd be really fun sharing her story.
sure,
Yeah. So when did you start going to Dominica? You have kind of adopted Dominica as an island that you're helping. And
I
how did that
have.
all begin?
Well, yeah, our flagship for our program is a Swan 48. And for many years, we'd go north and south. And in the Caribbean, since I raced in high school, we did a lot of the regattas. You mentioned we did 19 Heineken regattas, 11 Antigua sailing weeks, the BVI regatta. There'd almost be a regatta each month.
Hmm.
And we'd switch the boat from cruising to racing back and forth 2 or 3 times between doing Swan rendezvous, and we do a little cruising and things. So with that schedule for the first 10 or 12 years in the Caribbean, we didn't have time to explore and go to different islands because we were sort of tied to St. Martin with Heineken Regatta, the BVIs for their spring regatta, and then Antigua at the end. But finally, when we got tired of buying new sails, set of racing sails for $50,000 a set, which my partner at the time did twice, I decided we were just going to do the Heineken Regatta, do white sails, non-spinnaker, and make it a lot easier on the boat, et cetera, to organize. So this is about 10, 12 years ago. We've had the boat over 20 years now. So that gave us the opportunity to see more of the Caribbean, because there's a lot more. And it always bugs me when people go down to the Virgin Islands and don't go anywhere else except the Virgin Islands, or they go
Yeah.
to Georgetown, Bahamas, and sit there like it's an RV park and just sit there. There's so much to see, and it's just day sailing from island to island. So literally in the last 12, 15 years, we've been to just about every island down there. But it was, I guess, in about 2012, we went to Dominica because one of my skippers said, you should go to Dominica. It's really good. So I went down there for one trip, liked it so much. The next year we did 3 trips, bringing people down, not all the way back to St. Martin, but we crew changed out of Antigua because it's not very easy certainly then it was not easy to fly into Dominica. So we started doing more trips. And then how it came about was I got to know one of the boat boys, Albert, very well.
Albert.
And yeah, and he had he was an older guy with a bad leg, or older boat boy. We call him boat boys, but he was my age. I mean, he's in his 60s now. And his boat, I said, what do you do in the off season? He goes, well, we go a few miles offshore and we fish. And his boat looked literally like it was going to sink. So I said, well, listen, I've got this company, because my company that I working on boats was the personal yacht care company. So I have all the discounts to buy materials, whether it's resin or drums or cleats or anything. So I said, we're going to ask our membership to throw in a few more dollars when they pay their dues this year, and we're going to raise money to help you build a new boat. So we raised about $5,000, sent them the materials to build this boat, and went down the next year and sailed down there. And I'm looking at this bare hull out of it, and they have to sending them all this money. But by year 2, we actually had finished the boat and did a really good job. So this is now 2014, and I was delivering a boat in the Ark with some OPO members, which ends in St. Lucia, and then it had to get to St. Martin. So we stopped off in Dominica to see Albert and stuff, and we went in at night, and they used to have a little bit of a mooring field, but there was really nothing there. So while we were there on that stop, there's Pay's organization, which is sort of a union of the boat boys there. I said to them, well, I think, we could help you build a new mooring field. So we went to OPO and asked them that year to donate money to put in some moorings. Worked very well. We raised enough money to put in 30 moorings in place the first year. We've expanded that to 50. And then after the Hurricane Maria hit in 2017, our mooring effort turned into a relief effort. We actually sailed down that November. It was about a month after the storm. And 2 days after getting to St. Martin, I was sailing down with one other young OPO member with 5 generators and food and things like that, and money to get relief efforts going. And we supported them through that year. We actually put money towards for fuel for a tug that was bringing in relief, and put together a program to help sustain them, sort of like the PPP that we had here in the States. 9 of the most deserving families, we were able to give them $150 a month for 9 months, the off season for 2 years, to help them get through. And you just don't donate a mooring field, you also want to promote it. So we did that by starting a festival, which is now, I think, in its 8th year. The government helped take it over 3 years ago. So it's actually the 3rd Dominica Pays Yachting Festival, they named it, where moorings are free for the week and discount tours. So we'll be sailing back for that this year. So it's over 10 years we've been helping out. We're trying to expand that to another small town, Moreau, just a few miles south, that has a nice beach, to also put some moorings in there and get the government to build a dinghy dock. So again, just to have more people visit the island. Dominica, and again, a lot of people have been to the Caribbean, but imagine an island that there is not one dock to pull in with your boat to get fuel or water. I mean, you jug your fuel out, and there's a hose that goes in the water to a buoy, a water buoy, to yell for somebody to turn it on to fill up your tanks. It's cruising like it was back in the 70s, like the 80s.
Yeah, it is like going back in time.
Moorings are up to $12, not $50.
Up to 12.
Yeah, it's amazing. Customs, you can go in and out, and it costs a few dollars.
Yeah.
As opposed to being a big hassle. Up until 2 years ago, they were still using carbon paper. 6 copies and press hard.
I believe it. I believe it. And when I went with you, Hank, that's right. It was right after that hurricane, and the island was just stripped of vegetation. You could still tell that it would be a beautiful island, and I've got to go back, with it kind of reborn.
Well, on our 1 year, we actually, in promotion this, I hired a guy to come down and film it. And on our website, there's actually a 10-minute video about Dominica and cruising around that this guy did. He was a professional guy I hired, but it's pre-hurricane. So you could actually see the rainforest and everything. It grows back quickly. But when you have rainforests get knocked down, it changes the whole ecosystem, where it used to be covered. But there are, of course, sections that are still like that. It was decimating.
Yeah. I remember Albert took us up the Indian River. He rowed us up the river. That was, and even after the hurricane, it was still beautiful. And we saw the little hut that was used in filming the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes. Yep.
Is that still there, that hut?
Dominica, again, it's very special. It's the only river, since we're talking about the river, where you go up. I always say it's like Heart of Darkness, going up river and you go up to the Bush Bar, you go native.
That's right.
And you have to row up there. The public can't go up there with their boats or anything like that. So it's harder. But they have the only Indian reservation in the whole Caribbean. So like we have our Indian reservations in America. There's one there which really wasn't established till 1915. It has the 2nd largest boiling lake in the world. And what's a boiling lake? Well, it's a volcano that has water in it where it's bubbling, and it's not like you go swimming in it. You die. The largest is in New Zealand. So, I mean, what if New Zealand and Dominica have in public? Boiling lakes. Who would have thought that? It's actually like a 2.5-hour hike to get to it. And you look, and if there's no wind, all you see is steam. But when it gets blown away, you look down at this boiling lake. It's not a lot to look at. And then you hike back 2.5 hours, and then you jump in some cool water at the Tutu Gorge, which is pretty cool. But it used to be very hard to get to, but they're actually building a cable car, like a huge chairlift with gondolas with 30 people for the cruise ship people to get up there. And they're actually
Boy.
building this now, and it's sort of incredible. They sort of go from Jurassic Park to, Disneyland in 10 years there. They are sort of building a marina right now. Right now, just big hole they're digging. So I guess there's a plan for that. And the Chinese are helping putting in a huge airport. So it is going to
Hmm.
change in the next 5 to 10 years. So if you really want to see it in its primitive form and before it gets expensive, now is certainly time to go.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone, go see it now while it's still Jurassic Park.
Yes. And there are direct flights from Newark, New Jersey and Miami now,
Are
as well
there?
as going through Puerto Rico. So it is easier to get to. It's still the old airport, but they can fly in directly, and it is permissible. So safe enough.
No, I'd recommend sailing with you from St. Martin. That's the way to
With me or
get
with
there.
anybody, it's just
Yeah.
not to us, as you know, we charge very little money. It was more about bringing a full boat. And this year I have people coming, but they go ashore. We have some people flying in. It's more just
Yeah.
to have as many people as possible. And the idea is, of course, to have a good time, and it's cheap, but also encourage more people to come because we're helping the Pays members and the town. And if you remember, a very poor town, just by bringing more people so they make more money rather than just going in and donating and helping with the lower end. There are groups that do the orphanages and the old folks home and things like that. And you need that, but you also just need more commerce, more people to visit. So they're spending more money, and then everybody does better. So it's
Yeah.
really the trickle down and encouraging people to come, and for good reason, because it is a very special place, but they're very proud people. Information is not, is knowledge. So they don't share as much. It's pulling teeth to learn about things there. But once you get to know them, they're very proud, happy of what they have, want to show you and share it with us. So it is a great spot.
So you were working on the rigs. What type of job were you on the rigs for, like 2 weeks, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off? What kind of schedule were you on?
I was fortunate enough to start as on a rig, a drill ship, as overseas. They considered Canada overseas. So when I first went to Texas, I worked in a warehouse for 4 months until a spot opened up. You go to human resources, you're looking for a job. And, I walked in at 19. Oh, I grew up sailing. Okay, you're a seaman. I said, good. They gave me it's another catch-22. You can't get a job on a merchant vessel unless you have merchant marine papers, but you can't get merchant marine papers unless you have a job. So they give you a letter saying you have a job, even though you don't. And I got my Z card, which is good for life. And then went for physical thinking, okay, I'm hired. No, their job is to have somebody ready if somebody quits or gets hurt or something that you fill in. So I bugged them so much that I worked just in one of their warehouses for 4 months, and then got a position as an ordinary seaman. They had 7 drill ships, a company called Global Marine, which was only drill ships, 450-foot ships with derricks on them for more wildcat to go out and do the first exploration. So I had my 20th birthday on one of these rigs off of Newfoundland and did 3 hitches, 28 on, 28 off, which meant you got 25% more pay. And it wasn't traveling every 2 weeks or in the Gulf, sometimes even 1 week on, 1 week off. We did that one summer ending in October up in Newfoundland. Then we took the boat to Syracuse, Sicily, where the next contract was. So first we went to Boston with this ship with the derrick on it. They didn't know what it was. They had to stop the planes taking off in Boston to let us go in. We spent a week there just putting supplies on to go across the ocean for the next contract in Europe. And on the way, there's a position called storekeeping, which keeps track of it. Again, pre-computers, you would bag the stuff, put it into a system, and do it on a Cardex to keep track. And since a couple tractor trailer loads of supplies and parts came on board, the person on board called storekeeper had to inventory all this. And since I knew the system from working in the warehouse for 4 months, I asked him if he needed help. He'd teach me the rest of the job if the captain gave me time off from our 12 hours a day doing other duties. So when I came back to the office in Texas after that, I was a storekeeper, and then worked in Colombia, South America, Africa, different places, always wanting to stay offshore for that month on, month off and the
Yeah.
premium pay. For 5 years, I never paid rent. I have an apartment where you're gone 6 months and skiing or sailing or doing something other time. So it worked great. So I was able to save money and see the world and, learn how not to worry about things is
Yeah.
part of the discussion about here. You just kind of get out there and figure things out and, don't worry about something until there's something to worry about, which is everything with life. The doctor says we're checking on something. Well, don't worry about it till there's something to worry about.
Yeah.
People just worry too much and it's a problem with everything, media, every storm we have, it's the big news and worry about everything that's going to happen.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And storm forecasting now, Hank, it's amazing what you can get just on your phone, predict when or whatever, 10 days, 11 days out.
Hmm.
How how has that totally changed, do you think, y OPO and what you guys are able to do, or has it changed it?
No, no, no. Yeah, of course. Years ago, you were, a 1 or 2 day forecast was about as far as you could go. But now, as we were just talking about, they're predicting storms a week out, and so it has certainly changed. And now with the Starlink, it's instantaneous. But it's amazing. I often say, you go do an OPPO trip with a retired OPPO, a retired boat owner who has plenty of time. You show up and he goes, "Oh, we're waiting for the perfect weather window." And for them, the perfect weather window is you go out and motor for 2 days because there's no wind. Well, our Swan program in the fall, we're waiting up in Newport and a cold front comes by and it's blowing 25 degrees and we're leaving because it's 25 knots from the right direction.
Yeah.
25 knots, you go out there with half a jib and you're doing hull speed. Actually, this last year, we left, and it was a windy year, and, when we left the harbor, I knew it was gonna be blowing, 25, 30, so I actually put an extra line around the mainsail with the cover on, so it was all tied up, and we didn't have the main up the whole trip there, and we made it's the 4th quickest trip, out of 30 trips there, 'cause, under 4 days, because we were doing hull speed with a small piece of jib up.
Wow, that's fantastic. What do you still Hank, what do you 300,000 miles on the ocean, that's a lot. What do you still love about being out on the water?
It's really just the quiet and the nature and getting away from everything and steering a boat. The Swan 48 is a real fun boat to steer. So when you do trips and our Swan trips, we always sail. When you're delivering a boat, it's surprising how much of it is motor sailing or motoring because it's 6 knots in the right direction because somebody's paying you by the day to get it there. So they don't want you to see going along slowly. But and it's almost the perfect setting when everything's running well to really meet and talk to people. You'd be surprised how many people I run into that want to almost do a therapy or some sort of spiritual type, taking people out on boats and do their therapy or talking or getting away and talking to people. You've been on those watches at night or with folks where everything's good and maybe the autopilot is on because it's a delivery and you just talk about things and it's just out in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes you ask yourself, what's the farthest you've ever been from another human being? And when you solo across the ocean, or if you're just out with other people on a boat, you are not near anybody else. So you really are cut off. And at first it might seem weird, but you get used to that. And then you realize, how big the world is and how cool it is and how much there is to see. It's certainly slowing things down. No phones, nothing to worry about. A weekend away on a boat is like a week, a week or 2 weeks that you've done on the boats feels like a month. And it's just a really, really good way to unplug, recharge, and think. You're out there driving a boat. So we do 2-person watches out there driving and, the other person might be reading a book or hanging out, but you have lots of time to think, without looking at a screen or something else. And it's where you come up with ideas for offshore passage opportunities or other things. And you just unplugging and getting away. I think everybody should do that every once in a while, just get away and not worry about what's going on and try and think either short term or long term, what you're doing and what you want to do. And then certainly talking to other people and being exposed to more. How often do you meet new people in your life? You might meet some people through your kids at sports or a new job or through church or wherever, but even at a cocktail party, but you meet them more superficially. The trips that we do where you're with somebody and there's no place to go for a week or two, you really start asking those questions about families and where you grew up and things. And it's always civil. People need to be able to talk civilly, more and more. And it's fun. And if you look at it as I want to learn from this person, because everybody that goes out on the boats, they have a story. They're successful in some reason, in life, or there's a reason why they have the time and money to do this. So there is a story, and you ask the right questions, and you learn a lot.
Yeah, I've met great people and so many different backgrounds too, different walks of life. And
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We have people that they're different parts of the country, different jobs, and you'd never think they would never get along, trying to, and trying to do other things. But certainly the commonality of the sailing and the goal of getting from point A to point B is the basis for that. And the questions about what they might be looking to do in the future, that's the basis, but it goes off onto all other subjects and you
yeah.
just pursue that and it's fun.
Yeah, you mentioned the spirituality of it, and I feel when I'm out there under the stars and just so connected that
Hmm.
I kind of feel God's presence when I'm out there. I don't know about you. I just
Oh,
love
yeah.
that connection to
Absolutely. No, and there are people that, get into the lifestyle and the sport for that.
Yeah. All right, Hank. Well, I've got a quick rapid fire round for you of some quick questions
Okay.
to see how you respond. All right. So I'm going to make up the first one. Solo or with a crew? What do you prefer?
With a crew.
With a crew. Okay. Open ocean or island hopping?
Open ocean.
Open ocean. Okay. Favorite sailboat? Either one you sailed on or one you would love to sail on.
But both my Tiana 37 and these Swan 48s have been perfect for what we've wanted to do. So there's no perfect boat for anybody. Both of these were perfect for me in that it was a perfect live aboard, not really big, and certainly strong for going offshore. There are lots of boats that aren't built to go offshore, and most people are not going offshore. So there's no reason to spend a lot of money to get a really strong boat if you're coastal sailing.
Yeah.
So it's really what you're looking to do. And, one boat is not going to suit what you're looking to do throughout your life. You're going to have several boats as you go. So make sure you get a boat to what you want to do, and then you'll be very happy. But having the wrong boat for the wrong application doesn't work.
No. And that Swan 48 is an amazing boat. That was the one I sailed on
It's
with
it's
you.
it's it's when I started the Swan program, we had it was a charter fleet that used to be moved from St. Martin to Newport, and we had all different sizes. I'd always pick the 48 because it was just the most fun to sail.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a great boat. All right. One piece of gear you'd never leave behind when you go offshore.
Kindle, a book or something. Reading, especially on those longer solo trips or the shorthanded trips, you do also need to entertain yourself. And I love reading. Reading is the other, talking to people, meeting people, and reading is the secret to life, especially kids and everything out there. Just read anything. But
I don't know.
yeah, no, go autopilot. As long
Mhm.
as you have good sales, and autopilot's nice when you're shorthanded sailing, but again, the problem with the autopilot is you have people that go out there and never learn how to steer, and they get sold boats that, a couple can run the 60-foot boat, but not when things start going. So you have to be able to steer a whole lot. You have a lot of time steering because, I tell a story about we sent some Oppo people on a boat trip, and they left from the BVIs and the autopilot broke. They had the owner and his wife and three Opal members, and they said, "Oh, we got to turn back," because they didn't know how to steer their boat. So they actually turned back, spent 3 or 4 days fixing it. The Opal crew had to leave, and they were mad at me because the Opal crew left. And I go, "Well, you left. You had a perfectly good boat. The autopilot didn't work, but you couldn't drive your boat."
I wonder, Hank, for non-sailors, if they hear us talking about, well, how hard is it to steer a boat? What's the big deal?
Well, offshore is different than coastal because first you have no reference. So you're not heading for a tree or this or that, and you don't want to be looking at a compass all the time. And then when waves start moving you around, people
Yeah.
always want to oversteer. They all want to oversteer. So, and we jokingly say your wake is your report card. There's a bunch of S's back there. You're not doing very well. And I go, when you drive your car, are you driving around everything? No, you're driving fairly quick,
Yeah.
straight. So don't oversteer. It should be more than half a spoke either way. And you got people, pulling this way and that way and everything. So like anything, just when you first get your driver's license, doesn't mean you how to drive a car. So just with sailing, just more time, more sea time, more miles, you're going to get better. And try and steer as much as you can, not use the autopilot. And sometimes on deliveries, if it's a little bit rougher, the captain will insist you use autopilot because it'll do a better job and won't accidentally crash jibe or break something, which is really important too. So
Yeah.
that's why, my two dismastings, I'm glad it was my own boat, so I didn't have to explain to anybody. When we got helicopter rescued, luckily the owner was there and his wife. They were part of the decision-making process. And then I had Charlie Doan to write about it, so I didn't have to explain to anybody or explain to an owner what happened.
Yeah. And that's what I liked about the Swan program, sailing with you and the other captains, Tanya and Maurizio, is even in very rough conditions, you have us steer. We don't turn on the
Yeah.
autopilot.
Sure, sure. When do you want to see rough weather? You want to be on a Swan with a pro skipper next to you.
Yeah,
You don't want to
yeah,
be on your own boat or, some amateur at some point. So that is the time. So
yeah.
yes.
And then I've absolutely been with captains who no, that's when they turn on the autopilot. They don't want to risk anything happening.
Sure. I mean, how do you learn how to dock a boat? The owner is not going to let you dock the boat. I mean, you have
No.
to either take a docking course or take your own boat and learn
Yeah.
how to dock. A charter boat, you don't want to damage it or something. But yeah, no, it's hard to learn some of these skills. But certainly, steering a boat. You know, uh, I say you're experienced enough to go on the free trips and respond to the crew requests where they say they're looking for an experienced crew when it's three people and the autopilot breaks and the two people look at you and they say you can steer for 2 or 3 hours at a problem, right? And if you can't say yes, you're in trouble and you
Yeah.
shouldn't be there in the first place. You have to be able to steer a boat for 2 or 3 hours at a time in any conditions to be able to qualify for a shorthanded crew of three or two or three for longer trips. Don't expect the autopilot to be subbing in for you. If that breaks and the two guys have to steer 12 hours rather than 8 hours a day, they're going to be very upset with you.
Yeah. And I've never forgotten, Hank. We were coming back from Dominica and I was on a night watch and you were up and you were looking at the wake and it was a serpentine. I was going all over the place and you noticed I was totally sailing by the compass.
Yes.
And you taught me that lesson. You cannot sail by the compass because it's you're going to keep oversteering if you do that.
Yeah, especially if it's not the compass in front of you. You're looking at the electronic compass, which has a lag in it.
Yeah.
We call it chasing the compass
Yes.
because, and you oversteer a lot. So you just have to, know where that center spoke is, with a Turk's head or something, or even a piece of tape on the wheel.
Yeah.
And even at night, you know where that is, and then don't get it too out of control. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just the practice. I mean, how many people are at night in any sort of seas, on a big boat? Have to put yourself out there and you have to, stretch yourself. You have to, put yourself in a little uncomfortable position. So many people in life just want to be comfortable and don't want to try anything new. And the sailing is that. It doesn't have to be offshore. It just has to be when it's a little windier and you go out there and practice.
Yeah. All right. I don't know if you have one, but what was your scariest moment on a sailboat?
I told you how my mother was, she taught herself how to sail. And I remember, I think I come back from school with my report card and I was in second grade and she was in front of the yacht club. It was blowing. She had a Comet, which was like more of a performance boat, centerboard, big steel thing. And she pulled up to the dock and I jumped in with her and we're sailing across to show her my report card. And she's, almost out of control in and out of all these other boats. And that's the scariest I think I was ever been on a boat.
Sailing with your mom.
With my mom when I was little in Huntington Harbor.
That's funny. All right, last one for you, Hank. If you could sit down for a drink with any sailor in the world, who would you like to meet?
Let's see, there's so many people. Probably Paul Kayard.
Paul Kayard. I'm not
Paul
familiar
Kayard.
with Paul. What's his?
America's Cup, and he did a Volvo around the world.
Okay.
He worked for the French team for a while, but just known as a really, really nice guy. And what we did one year, I actually did an around the world rally one year. I've been with the rallies and things, and it was in the year 2000 to go around the world. And 2 or 3 years ahead of time, I saw it works perfectly to be on the international date line for the start of the next, 1,000 years, to be in New Zealand for the America's Cup and Australia for the Olympic. So what we did is for the Newport, for the Atlantic City Boat Show in January, which is while the America's Cup was going on, I got a replica of the cup in my booth. We got like a Dead Sea Scroll type thing and had people come and sign good luck to Paul Kayard and his team. It was Team One. So we had the name of all the people on the bottom and their logo at the top and made up this big scroll. We shipped it down to New Zealand and had the people in my rally in New Zealand present it to Paul Kayard and the crew. We got these great pictures of him standing with our OPO members and our people in our rally with this big banner. And it was they won that race that day, and it was the last race they won. And that year we weren't even in the America's Cup. But I've
Yeah.
heard it, and I've heard he's such a really, really nice guy. He was the head of U.S. Sailing for a short time and head of the Olympics a few years ago, and that had a bit of a blow up because I think it was more sailors trying to run the organization rather than the people with the big bucks. So that didn't work out too well. So yeah, so Paul Kayard.
Are there any other sailors that have kind of shaped you and you're through the years?
I was never in Newport or Annapolis area. It's more the people that you meet later on, and the people like the John Kretschmer and Patrick Childress, who was one of my skippers, John Neal. The people were out there as almost hippies back in the 70s, sailing
Yeah.
on their little boats that were just loving it. they said, well, how are we going to make a living? And they said, we're just going to keep doing this and teach sailing. And Patrick Childress was one of my skippers, and he got into podcasting for a while. He actually met his wife on our trips, and he knew these guys back then. And then they're doing what I'm doing now and taking people out there and sharing what they've learned. So it's not so much like I knew them well, but you almost get mentored by looking what they do and how they do it. I was at the Chicago Boat Show, and I'm a company of one. I'm in my booth. I don't leave for anything. But Kretschner was doing one of his seminar things about what he does, and I just snuck off to see it, to see how he did it. And he was doing what I was. Like you say,
Yeah.
learning by doing. You know how to sail. You just need to go out there and sail with different people on different boats and different situations. So that's the answer to it. They say, do something for 10,000 hours and you become an expert. So it's just do. So
Yeah.
what I like to do is offer those people that opportunity to either do it through our Swan program or by hooking up with other people or something like that. Certainly Jimmy Cornell, he's done a lot for the industry by starting the rally concept. On my website, I have a 17-page rant about why isn't there a professionally run, rally for Americans. It used to be the Caribbean 1500. I had my rally. There are several rallies, but now it's the Salty Dog, who is it's a good organization, but it's run by amateurs, not run by the industry to do what's best for everybody. Again, not trying to criticize anybody, but I really think that professionally run rally to give people something to aspire to. In Europe, people say, I'm retiring in 5 years, buying a boat, doing the arc,
Yeah.
whether it's go to the Caribbean or around the world. And it's really set. And if you look at the boat shows, all the boats are built in Europe now. There are no American built boats anymore. And sailing is much bigger sport in England and Europe and all these other places. And it's more because I think of the goals that people set in these rallies and how they help people more to do it, rather than just, trying to sell a couple of 60-foot boat by pushing buttons and everything happens magically.
Yeah. Yeah. It is too bad that those rallies have faded away. There's one guy from my local cycling club who sold everything, bought a boat with his family, and he's doing the arc around the world.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. The rallies give you sort of a date and a structure. It's not like, the rallies that say for the safety, it's not safety. Unless you're sinking, nobody's going to come back and fix your toilet or get your engine going. I can tell nightmare stories of sending 6 boats to help one boat and 3 of them get in trouble. That's not how it works. If you really need help, yes. And of course, certainly now with, the Starlink and everything, it's a lot easier to call up and get help for medical things or something like that. But we're losing a lot of the self-reliance and the MacGyver and figured out on your own, because it's too easy to pick up a phone or push a button. So the last big challenge was getting from point A to point B on your own, not looking for help or not expecting help.
Do you think that's made it harder to get younger people? We were talking earlier about the need to get more younger people into sailing.
No, yeah, the problem with younger people is student debt. They don't have the money. They don't have the time. You graduate from school and, you got to get a car, you got to get a job, you got to get a place to live, and you get married, kids and everything. Where's the time and the money come in for a boat? It's just not there. And
Yeah.
then it's just so expensive. You could get a boat for free. I almost say, the way to help the industry is just give everybody a boat, just like, printers, and you make the money on the ink, give everybody a boat. It's just so expensive to keep a boat now,
Yeah.
unless you have options, when it's thousands of dollars a year to insure and dock and maintain a boat. It makes it very difficult for, young people to get into it.
Well, I think what OPO does though is I think you are an answer to that if they can afford to just get the start,
Yes. It's one of the cheaper ways. Again, you can take a course and learn, whether it's a several, week course or a weekend course, but then you have to go buy a boat or be able to rent a boat. There aren't a lot of boats that you can rent because it's a short season in lots of places. There are a lot of great community sailing centers that don't cost a lot of money. There's actually a good book, Nicholas Hayes years ago, How to Save Sailing. And it dispersed a lot of the myths about, oh, sailing's difficult. He said, well, people like the challenge. It's expensive. No, it doesn't have to be expensive. You drive a used car and you have a 30-foot or 28-foot boat, and that's your family vacation, and you're not sending away kids to camp and going on other vacations. You just do there. So it doesn't have to be expensive. But again, it's all where you live, and you have to have the time. You can learn and do day sailing and stuff, but to make that transition to the bigger boats is hard, and we help in some ways. But we also, if we don't have enough boat owners and boats and boat owners and delivery skippers, then there aren't those opportunities either. So it's not like OPO, I want 1,000 members and only have, 20 opportunities a year. So it's a balancing act. So probably a third of the people that want to join OPO, if they don't have the time or the resources, or the skills, I say, I don't want to take your money if it's not going to work for you, unless you're in that right position. So a lot of the people are those that have the time because they're self-employed, or have more vacation time because they've been working for a long time and might have 5 or 6 weeks a year, and can plan ahead of time for that.
Yeah.
Or once you retire or something and take advantage of the short and short notice, I consider 2 weeks or less as short notice. But as you know, sometimes somebody's calling up, I need crew 2 days from now because my crew broke his leg.
Hank, I think you've had such a huge positive impact on the sailing industry. Is there any particular legacy or what you hope to be known for?
So certainly, our work in Dominica will continue. Even the OPO crew network, I'll keep doing, as long as I'm alive. I'm assuming the offshore, I'm starting to cut back on because again, we all realize that we need to slow down with skiing or tennis or sailing or whatever as we get older. So I can't do as many deliveries as I used to. Plus, with 10 grandchildren and a wife who's retired, I don't want to be as way as much as I have been or could be. So you have those obligations as well, and enjoy that. So it's trying to spend more time at home, and I'll keep the Swan program going for another at least 2 or 3 years. The two of the owners wouldn't know what to do if I stopped. So we almost keep it going for them and for the skippers that I pay well. And I always feel as long as I can still sail with a fleet, I keep the quality of the program. Once I stop sailing with it and I just send people, I'm sure they still do a good job, but I like to have my hand in the game there and be with the fleet too. So I'm sure we'll doing the Swan program another 2 or 3 years at least too. Oppo for a long time, and to see if it maybe catches on and somebody else will want me to help for free consult about how to put together a professionally run rally, whether it's just across the ocean or around the world. I think that's something that should get more attention, but I'm not going to try and get a bunch of people to do something they don't want to do. I'm actually the official crew network for the Newport Bermuda race. And people aren't calling you to get crew to race with. It's more for the return afterwards,
Yeah.
because people don't want to take the second week off from work to return the boat. So, hey, we make it easier for people with boats to participate because we help them with that problem of how do you get the boat back.
Yeah.
So it's just more of that win-win-win situation where people are, oh, I'll happily go for free and even pay my own way to help sail a boat back from Bermuda. Sure. And the owners, oh, good. I don't have to pay people and to fly in. No, they'll happy to help you.
Yeah, I'll be watching out for those opportunities from Bermuda this year. And Hank, I just love getting the emails because they're all
Some
different
people
and it's
I don't have the time, but it's worth it to get good emails,
yeah,
about the different what people are doing. I jokingly say sometimes, if you ever get fired or your wife throws you out of the house, you have options.
but
You
it's
go
so
sailing.
fun, the different captains, the different boats, where they're going. It's just you kind of live vicariously or sail vicariously in those periods when you can't get out. It's just so much fun. All right, Hank, just wrapping up, any last message to someone who maybe, as a result of this conversation, starts feeling the pull of going sailing? Any recommendations for how to take the first step?
Yeah, find out who's giving lessons locally. It's much cheaper to learn on smaller boats than big boats. You don't have to do a 1 week live aboard and spend thousands of dollars. You could learn in an ensign or small boat. Weekend courses for well under $1,000. And there are community sailing centers if you're fortunate enough to live within even an hour's driving. In Boston, Milwaukee, New York. There's all sorts of places that have centers for a set fee for the year. You qualify and take out smaller boats that you can take out on your own, and you learn more. And then the bigger boats they have, once you get good enough, they let you charter those, and they don't cost a fortune either. Much cheaper than owning the boats. Like lots of things, I think the future is more in shared use of things. Whether it's the autonomous cars, the boats. There are some programs out there where you just join a program and you get use of boats. I think that'll become more popular
Yeah,
just because it's so expensive for boats. So it doesn't cost a lot. People will give you a Catalina 22 almost. I mean, we had one here that a guy was almost giving away, but there are the expenses of owning a boat, so people are shy about doing that. But it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You can get into it, and then quite quickly you can qualify for the free stuff that we offer as well.
yeah, awesome. Well, Hank, this has been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed digging into this
Absolutely.
more with you. So thanks a
Yep.
lot.
No, enjoyed talking to you.